Well, welcome to Winnipeg in winter, and this would be a good place for all of you to come visit someday. Probably not in winter, but I'd love to have you come and join us. My name is Fred Stoesz, and my wife Jolene and I live here, and of course we spent 9 years of our life in Wichita with World Impact, and I was asked to share briefly about what God was doing in the 90s in terms of church planting, and so that's what I want to do. Jolene and I had spent 19 years of our ministry with World Impact in Los Angeles, and then we knew it was time for Jolene to move home back to Kansas, and it's where we raised our 4 children and had some amazing years there. And World Impact made a major shift during those years and recognized that we'd done amazing things in terms of evangelism and follow-up and discipleship, but how are we going to take those who had accepted Christ and draw them into the local church? And we realized that church planting needed to become part of what we as a ministry also needed to do and do well. So church planting began then, and when we moved back to Wichita, it took a little while, but in 1996, Jolene and I started walking down on South Meridian and Pawnee, that area. We realized that there was a church building sitting empty, but it was also a place where there did not seem to be any other church that was doing and engaging the opportunities that were right there. So I remember having a vacation Bible school that summer in 1996, and out of that we began to recognize there was families who were already there who had accepted Christ, who were looking for a church home, and there was others that had just made brand new decisions for Jesus, and others of course that were seeking Him. And so from that little beginning of the vacation Bible school, small groups were started, and out of that small group we moved into that building out there on South Meridian, and that first church plant in Wichita began to happen. We called it United at the Cross, based on Ephesians chapter 2 verse 13. Just how God through the cross, through what Jesus did on the cross, brings His people together. And the church began to grow. Lots of other colors, cultures, class. God just bound us together. It was an amazing time. We loved those years that we spent at United at the Cross and saw that little church plant grow. And amazing from that, there's so many of them are still friends. Those who have accepted Christ during that time and were nurtured and now continue to grow in Christ. Of course, we looked in other neighborhoods as well. We looked for neighborhoods where there was no other church home that seemed to be drawing people in. And are there some areas that really are unreached? And so we brought a team together of World Impact missionaries, and we went into the Oaklawn neighborhood, and I remember so clearly which street I drove down. I remember seeing the opportunities, the brokenness that was there. We began to bring some of our youth from over at the ranch. They began to do basketball with the kids in that neighborhood, and we began to have events in the school gymnasium. And again, out of that first chance opportunity to represent Jesus there, it was amazing how this little church began to spring up. World Impact missionaries, we began to call it, I think we called it Lighthouse Community Church, and that church continued to grow, and it's still there. And God has done amazing things in the Oaklawn neighborhood through that Lighthouse Church that was planted back in the 90s. We also went out to Plainview, and I remember walking the streets in Plainview, and we ended up buying one of their little buildings there and making it into a community center. And again, it was through Jack and Bonnie Ramos that started our first church plant to a Hispanic community there. And I remember, again, my Spanish was limited, but man, what amazing things God did while we were there in the Plainview neighborhood. And that little church again sprouted out. People began to accept Christ, began to come together. The team that was formed around that, and some of them just stayed with it for some years. And again, God birthed a little church plant in that Plainview neighborhood. We tried other neighborhoods as well, right? Of course, there was things going on here, there in the North End area, and God did good things there, and also down on Oliver, over there near Harry. I forget what we call that neighborhood, but all those apartments that are there, so many of them were empty, but also so many immigrant families were living there. And again, we had a team that God brought together of World Impact people, and also missionaries, and also friends. And again, God did amazing things in that area as well. So we don't really know what God will do with all those seeds that were sown way back then. I know that the groups that were formed, the teams that were formed, man, we were all, I think everyone was so dedicated to the vision of planting churches in the city, for the city, and of course the honor and glory of God, for the building of His kingdom. And it's going to be amazing when we have that last, that amazing meeting, that amazing time. We go into the eternal kingdom and have those church plants gathered, the people of God coming together and seeing what God has done through our years of engagement there in Wichita during the 90s. So thanks for letting me share just briefly what God has done. Story after story came out of that time, and it's still so much a part of my heart and Jolene's heart. And we'll see what God's going to do even in this generation and the years to come. So thanks for letting me share.